So Warren Buffett is, almost universally recognized as the greatest investor of our time.
Oh, absolutely. Hand down.
But there is this really glaring, kind of uncomfortable truth about his success that we honestly tend to just ignore.
Right, the timeline of it all.
Exactly. More than 99% of his massive multi-billion-dollar net worth was not actually generated by his supposedly unmatched ability to analyze a balance sheet.
Which is what everyone thinks it is.
Right. I mean, it wasn't born from complex financial modeling or like these perfectly timed stock trades. It was generated after his 50th birthday, quite simply, by just waiting.
It's wild to think about.
It is. The math behind his wealth is surprisingly elementary, but the psychology required to actually execute it, that is excruciatingly difficult.
Yeah, it's a profound shift in perspective, really.
And so today, we are exploring why the underlying math of money is, well, practically useless if you haven't mastered the psychology driving your behavior.
Because we're so conditioned to treat personal finance as an academic discipline, we think of it like physics or engineering, where if you just input the correct formula, you're guaranteed a predictable output.
But money doesn't operate in a sterile laboratory.
No, not at all. It operates in the incredibly messy, deeply emotional arena of the human mind.
Which brings us to our topic today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are tackling a stack of materials that will completely reframe how you should be thinking about your assets.
I'm really excited about this stack.
Yeah, it's a good one. We are pulling insights from classic wealth manifestos, including Georges Clayson's The Richest Man in Babylon, and, of course, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
The classics.
Right. And then we are layering in Morgan Housel's modern classic, The Psychology of Money, and blending all of that with, interestingly, a practical, everyday operational manual called 1 to 40 Tried and Trusted Ways to Become More Productive at Work.
The cross-pollination between these sources is honestly what makes this analysis so compelling.
Yeah, the productivity manual really caught me off guard.
Right, because you have these ancient parables sitting right next to modern corporate productivity strategies, and they're all ultimately pointing at the exact same cognitive biases.
Exactly. So our mission today is to extract 10 specific life-changing psychology of money lessons from these texts.
10 lessons to basically unbrainwash ourselves.
Yeah, the goal is to strip away that intimidating veneer of finance as a strict math problem and help you recognize it for what it truly is, a behavioral game.
And to understand how that game works,
Yeah.
I think we first need to look at the productivity manual in our stack.
Oh, right. Specifically how it differentiates between efficiency and effectiveness.
Yes. Which gives us our first major lesson today, which is behavior fundamentally beats intelligence.
Right.
So efficiency is simply doing a task rapidly and without error. You can build a sturdy, beautiful ladder incredibly fast.
But effectiveness is ensuring that ladder is actually leaning against the correct wall.
Exactly, which is exactly where high-income earners often stumble.
Oh, totally.
Like, you can optimize your career path, you can negotiate these really aggressive salary bumps, and rigorously track every single deduction on your tax return.
Which is financial efficiency. You are building the ladder with incredible speed.
But if your underlying behavioral tendencies are unchecked, like if you are highly prone to lifestyle creep, or you panic sell your investments, the moment the financial news cycle turns negative, your ladder is leaning against the wrong wall.
So all that technical proficiency is entirely negated by the behavioral failure.
100%.
Because the spreadsheets tell us what we should do, but they completely fail to account for what we actually will do when, stress or desire hits.
Which is the perfect pivot to our second lesson. We
Yeah.
have to address what is actually pushing that ladder.
Right. Kiyosaki outlines this in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says that for the vast majority of people, the primary drivers of financial decision-making aren't rational at all. They are fear and greed.
Yes, and those emotions create this relentless, almost invisible loop.
Oh, it's totally a trap.
Right, because the baseline fear of insolvency, of, not being able to cover rent or secure a future, it compels people to work. They exchange their time for capital to neutralize that fear.
But the moment the capital arrives, the relief is instantly replaced by desire or, greed.
Exactly. The influx of money triggers the imagination. You start projecting all the status and comfort that this new capital could acquire.
So then you expand your lifestyle.
Right. Which requires even more capital to maintain, which then reintroduces the exact same baseline fear of insolvency.
It's honestly remarkably similar to the psychology of diet and nutrition.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right, because we all know the thermodynamic reality of losing weight consume fewer calories than you expend.
The math is undefeated.
The mathematical formula is universally understood, but knowing the math does absolutely nothing to stop someone from, like, eating an entire pint of ice cream at 1 in the morning after a highly stressful day.
I feel personally attacked.
We've all been there, but that's the point. You can't fix emotional eating with a better calculator. You have to isolate the underlying emotional trigger.
That's spot on. Kiyosaki actually captures this dynamic perfectly with the metaphor of a donkey dragging a heavy cart.
Oh, the carrot and the stick.
Yeah, the owner directs the donkey by jangling a carrot on a stick, just inches from its face. And the donkey exerts massive amounts of energy chasing the carrot, completely unaware that the whole pursuit is an engineered illusion.
And the owner gets to their destination, but the donkey simply gets, like, a fleeting taste of a carrot, only to wake up and face a new carrot the next day.
Right. So to achieve any level of true financial autonomy, we have to recognize when we are acting like the donkey. We can't keep letting unexamined emotional impulses dictate our labor and our spending.
Yeah. If fear keeps us working and desire keeps us spending, we really have to ask what is actually dictating what we spend our money on.
Because it is rarely for pure utility.
No, never. Like, when we buy a luxury car that depreciates by 20% the literal moment the tires touch the street, we aren't paying for transportation.
No, we are paying for our third lesson, the ego.
Or, more accurately, we are failing to realize that true wealth is actually what you don't see.
This is such a major theme in Morgan Housel's work. Our culture fundamentally conflates being rich with being wealthy.
But they are entirely different things.
Diametrically opposed in practice, honestly. Being rich simply indicates a high level of current income. If someone is driving a $100,000 sports car, the only definitive financial fact you know about them is that they possess $100,000 less than they did before they bought the car.
Right, or they're just carrying an enormous amount of high-interest debt.
Exactly.
So, like, rich is loud. It requires physical evidence, the car, the watch, the zip code to exist in the minds of others. But wealth is silent. Wealth is the portfolio sitting unviewed in a brokerage account. It is the option to quit a toxic job.
Yes. We base our entire societal hierarchy of financial success on visible consumption.
Which leads to the ultimate paradox, right? Spending money to signal to others how much money you have is literally the most efficient way to reduce how much money you have.
It's tragic when you frame it like that. And that paradox introduces our fourth lesson. Saving is simply the gap between your ego and your income.
I love that definition.
Traditional financial advice usually dictates that you need a specific goal to save. You save for a down payment or a wedding or a kid's education.
Right, they tell you to give every dollar a job.
Exactly. But Housel argues that the most potent form of saving requires no specific goal at all. You should save simply as a hedge against life's inherent unpredictability.
Because past a certain threshold of basic biological and physical comfort, most spending is really just a peacock displaying its feathers.
It is status signaling.
Yeah.
Pure and simple.
But when you decouple your spending from your ego, your savings rate naturally explodes. You just stop leveraging your future financial freedom just to maintain this present-day illusion of status for people who honestly aren't really paying attention to you anyway.
People are way too obsessed with their own lives to care about your car.
Exactly. Which leads right into one of the most difficult concepts to internalize, our fifth lesson, the superpower of enough.
This is so hard for high achievers.
There is a brilliant story in the source material about the authors Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller to illustrate this. Let's talk about that.
Oh, I love this story. So they are attending this really lavish party hosted by a prominent billionaire on Shelter Island.
Okay.
And Vonnegut leans over to Heller and points out that their host likely makes more money in a single day than Heller's monumental, generation-defining novel, Catch-22, has earned in its entire existence.
Which is a crazy thought.
Right. But Heller doesn't miss a beat. He looks at Vonnegut and replies, "Yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough."
Wow. Okay, I understand the philosophical appeal of that story, but let's pressure test it for a second.
Sure.
Because we operate in a capitalist framework that inherently demands growth. And the productivity manual we read for this very deep dive is literally about optimizing output to achieve more. Doesn't adopting a mindset of enough Just neuter ambition?
It sounds like a sophisticated justification for settling,
Right,
right?
exactly,
Right.
like leaving potential on the
Yeah,
table.
it's a really critical distinction to make. Enough is not the absence of ambition. It is the presence of a boundary.
Okay, unpack that.
The psychological trap of wealth accumulation is the hedonic treadmill. If your expectations and your desires rise in perfect tandem with your income, there is literally zero mathematical utility in earning more.
Because you just spend it all anyway.
Right. You will exert twice the effort to arrive at the exact same baseline level of psychological dissatisfaction. The most difficult financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving.
So if you cannot define what enough looks like, you will inevitably take on catastrophic levels of risk to acquire things you don't actually need.
Exactly.
So enough isn't about halting progress, it's about defining victory conditions so you don't play a game with no end until you eventually lose.
That's the perfect way to phrase it.
But, even if we establish those boundaries and we manage to tame the ego, we still have to deploy our capital into a market that is utterly chaotic.
Yes, the market doesn't care about your boundaries.
Right, we don't control the macroeconomic environment. And that brings us to lesson 6. Luck and risk are siblings.
They really are.
The story of Bill Gates and Kent Evans from the sources is perhaps the clearest illustration of this dynamic.
It's a heartbreaking story, honestly.
Yeah.
So everyone knows the genesis of Bill Gates. In 1968, he happened to attend Lakeside High School, which possessed a teletype terminal connected to a mainframe computer.
Which was basically unheard of at the time.
Right. That access allowed a young Gates to develop thousands of hours of programming experience before most universities even had computer science departments.
And Housel notes that the statistical probability of a teenager having that level of access in 1968 was roughly 1 in a million.
It was an extraordinary alignment of luck.
But the narrative usually stops there to praise Gates' work ethic, completely ignoring his best friend, Kent Evans.
Right. Evans was just as bright, just as obsessed with coding, and equally ambitious.
They were planning to build their future together.
They were. But Evans experienced a tragic mountaineering accident before graduation and passed away.
It's awful.
And the statistical probability of a high school student dying on a mountain in the United States is also roughly 1 in a million.
Wow. It perfectly encapsulates how luck and risk are the exact same mechanism, simply operating at opposite ends of the spectrum.
Right. Because we are highly susceptible to survivorship bias. We look at successful outliers and attribute 100% of their outcome to their individual effort.
Because acknowledging the role of luck diminishes the ego.
Exactly. And conversely, we often judge failures harshly without acknowledging the invisible headwinds of risk.
Understanding that luck and risk are constant, uncontrollable forces in the market forces us to be humble about our financial victories and, crucially, forgiving of our own strategic failures.
It fundamentally changes how you evaluate your own decisions. You can execute a mathematically flawless investment thesis and still get wiped out by an unpredictable black swan event.
The math was right, but you experienced the wrong side of risk.
Yep, which is why our 7th lesson is so vital. Aim to be reasonable rather than cold irrational.
This one is huge because academic finance is built on the concept of Homo economicus, right? The idea that humans are perfectly rational calculators who consistently make decisions to maximize mathematical utility.
But we aren't. We are biological creatures. We are managing stress, marital dynamics, past traumas, and just everyday exhaustion.
Right, we don't make financial decisions in a vacuum on a spreadsheet. We make them at the dinner table.
Yeah.
So, if we abandon the pursuit of perfectly rational, maximized returns, what becomes the metric for a good financial decision? Like, what's the ultimate litmus test if it isn't maximizing returns?
Housel offers the ultimate answer for this. Does this decision help me sleep at night?
Sleep over spreadsheets.
Yes. A strictly rational financial model might dictate that you should invest your entire 6-month emergency fund into an S&P 500 index fund because, historically, the market outpaces the inflation rate of a cash savings account.
Right, logically, it is mathematically optimal.
But if a 10% market correction causes you so much anxiety that you literally lie awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, your psychological threshold has been breached.
And the moment that happens, you are highly likely to panic sell at the absolute bottom of the dip just to relieve the psychological pain.
Exactly. A reasonable investor accepts the mathematically suboptimal returns of a cash savings account precisely because it prevents a behavioral catastrophe in the broader portfolio.
It makes perfect sense when you factor in the human element. And speaking of market dips and volatility, that transitions us directly into lesson 8. Nothing is free. Learn to pay the fee.
This is a huge perspective shift. In normal consumer transactions, the price of an item is explicitly stated on a label.
You know exactly what it costs.
Right. But in financial markets, the price tags are invisible, which creates massive cognitive dissonance. If you want to capture the historical long-term compounding growth of equities, the price of admission is enduring severe volatility.
It is sitting through recessions, bear markets, and terrifying geopolitical news cycles.
Yeah, and the psychological error is that most investors interpret a 20% drop in their portfolio as a fine.
Like a penalty for doing something wrong.
Exactly. They view it like a speeding ticket. They think, oh, no, I must have done something wrong. I need to adjust my strategy to stop getting fined.
But volatility isn't a fine, it's a fee.
It's the cost of doing business.
Right. It's like buying a ticket to a roller coaster. When the roller coaster cart tips over the edge of a massive drop and your stomach completely drops out, you don't get angry at the park operator.
No, you expect it.
You don't assume you made a mistake by getting on the ride, and you certainly don't try to unbuckle your harness and jump out mid-fall.
That would be a terrible idea.
You accept the stomach drop as the necessary price you paid for the thrill of the ride.
That is a fantastic analogy. Reframing volatility from a fine to a fee completely alters your behavioral response to a market crash. You just stop trying to outsmart the system to avoid the penalty, and you simply accept the discomfort. You hold your position.
And if we manage to do all of this, if we recognize our emotional triggers, suppress our ego to increase our savings rate, respect luck and risk, optimize for sleep, and gladly pay the fee of volatility, we finally reach the ultimate payoff.
The reward for all that psychological work.
Exactly. This brings us to segment 4 and lesson 9, the counterintuitive magic of compounding time.
Which loops us right back to our opening discussion about Warren Buffett. We attribute his wealth to his intellect, but the actual mechanism is time.
Just massive amounts of time.
Right. Human brains evolved to track linear threats, like a predator running toward us at a constant speed. We did not evolve to intuitively grasp exponential growth.
No, it breaks our brains.
It really does. If you take $1 and double it every year, the early years feel entirely insignificant. It takes a massive amount of time for the curve to actually steepen, but when it does, the numbers become incomprehensible.
That is exactly why the statistic about Buffett accumulating 99% of his wealth after age 50 feels so absurd to us.
Right.
Because he didn't suddenly get significantly better at investing in his 50s. The math just finally hit the vertical part of the exponential curve.
Yes. He started investing at age 10, and he never interrupted the compounding process.
The highest returns don't come from finding the perfect asset class. They come from finding a good, solid asset class and just letting it sit uninterrupted for decades.
As Housel humorously points out in the source material, the most effective investing book ever written shouldn't feature complex charts or market analysis. It should literally just be a single page that says, shut up and wait.
Shut up and wait. I love that.
But the friction is that waiting is boring, and human beings love to tinker. We constantly interrupt compounding to chase the dopamine hit of taking action.
So true. But the ultimate goal isn't just to watch a number get larger on a screen, though. Which brings us to our final unifying lesson, lesson 10. Money's highest dividend is time.
This is the core of it all.
Kiyosaki provides a framework in Rich Dad, Poor Dad that completely redefines the concept of wealth. He argues that wealth has absolutely nothing to do with your net worth, your zip code, or the accumulated luxury goods sitting in your garage.
Right. Kiyosaki measures wealth strictly as a unit of survivability.
Which is such a cool concept.
It really is. He poses this brilliant question. If you stopped working completely today, how many days forward could you survive while maintaining your standard of living?
So if your monthly baseline expenses are $4,000 and the cash flow generated by your investments is $4,000, your survivability metric is infinite.
Exactly. You have achieved true financial independence.
Because the intrinsic value of capital isn't its ability to acquire material possessions. The ultimate value of money, the highest dividend it pays, is absolute autonomy.
Autonomy is the prize.
It is the ability to wake up on a Tuesday morning and realize, I can do whatever I want today, with whoever I want, for as long as I want. You aren't buying cars. You are buying back your own life from the friction of obligation.
It is the perfect synthesis of everything we've discussed today. When you redefine money not as a tool for status, but as a tool for acquiring time, all those behavioral adjustments, ignoring the ego, embracing enough, weathering the volatility, they suddenly become incredibly easy to execute.
Because you have a real why.
Right. You aren't depriving yourself of a luxury purchase. You are actively purchasing your future freedom.
We really started this deep dive looking at money as a rigid, intimidating mathematical puzzle. But by layering these sources together, the reality is clear. Managing money is fundamentally a psychological discipline.
It's all in your head.
It is. It is about understanding that effectiveness and behavior will always beat raw efficiency and intelligence. We have to decouple our savings rate from our ego, respect the unpredictable nature of luck and risk, and optimize our decisions for a good night's sleep rather than a perfect spreadsheet.
Sleep over spreadsheets.
Exactly. If we can pay the psychological fee of volatility and let time do the heavy lifting, we unlock the ultimate prize, autonomy. But if money's highest dividend is buying back your time, I want to leave you with one final, slightly uncomfortable thought to mull over.
There we go.
What happens when you actually get it? If you spend your entire adult life single-mindedly chasing financial independence, but you never take the time to cultivate an identity, deep passions, and meaningful relationships outside of your work and wealth accumulation, well, you might find that waking up on that Tuesday morning with absolute unstructured freedom isn't a victory. It might be the most terrifying reality of all.
That is a very real, very sobering thought.
Something to think about while you're building that wealth. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the psychology of money. Take these 10 lessons, step away from the spreadsheets, and start mastering the game being played in your own mind. We will see you next time.